Good early afternoon. We are live here on the Blue Plate Special. I'm Andy Andrews. You have joined us at Wisdom Harbor Studios in Orange Beach, Alabama. And we're here on the second floor, west side of the wharf. Yep, home of the famous Marlin statues and the famous escalator statues. If you visit us, you have to take a picture on the escalator statues. It's just unbelievable. They're life-size. They look just like escalators. Just perfect. We're glad to have you here. If you're new to us and you're on Facebook, click that notification button there and turn your notifications on your phone so that when we're live, you'll be notified that we're doing something. And if you'll also share. Okay, sharing is caring. And we got a fun show today. We're going to talk about presidential politics. Not really. We're going to talk about presidents from the past. We're going to talk about just like crazy stuff that you didn't know about presidents. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. If you're on YouTube, press that subscribe button, okay? That would really help us. And if you're on Twitter, I hope you can say hello and not get your account canceled. So Instagram, we'll be posting that after the show. Instagram's not live, but it's posted right after the show. Marcy Crosser Taylor, good morning from Pasco, Washington. Kat Hooker from Spring City, Tennessee. Eva Jean Hodge from Elkin, North Carolina. Jeff Herring. So where are you? You're in Forsyth County, and it's overcast. Man, it is windy here. I just cannot believe how windy it is. We can't fish. It's like 4 to 6 foot seas. You just can't even fish. So Teresa Rollerhate from Mobile, Ellen Green Dark, you're on vacation this week. So you get to watch the Blue Plate Special live from sunny Sarnia, Ontario. So you didn't say sunny and warm. So Rhonda Hackberry Robertson from Madison, Tennessee, just across the river from the Grand Ole Opry House. Do you know, now you know I used to do Nashville Now a lot. That was on TNN. It was the Nashville Network. And that's when Opryland, the theme park, was actually still there. And then the studios kind of bordered the park. Well, when Mr. Roy Acuff had kind of retired, and he was, kind of drifting into Alzheimer's a little bit, they built him a house right there on the edge of the studio property, and it was right on a curve of the Grizzly River Rampage. Where, you're in the boats and you're holding on, you're bouncing off it's going through the rapids and everything. And it was so funny to me. I would get like down there a little bit, and Mr. Roy would come out and he would stand there out on his rail, and people would like bounce off the thing, and they'd look up and there's Roy Acuff, and they would and I just thought that was so funny. And he would just be like, hi. And he was like 8 feet from him. Jan Ritter, hey. Patricia Garrison, as Barney folks say, hey, Ange. Hey, we got studio guests in here today from Bovey, Minnesota. Who's from Minnesota? You guys are from Minnesota? All right. Now, where is that, close to Duluth? Yeah? Okay. Well, Dan Stone, who is like the preacher that lost his mind, not really, but, when you're a preacher at the beach and you decide to move to Duluth, that just seems it's like, what is going on, Dan? Little Elm, Texas. Where's the Texas people? You're from Little Elm, Texas? Wow, that's very cool. And Noblesville, Indiana. Hey, how are you? Are you guys anywhere near Anderson, near Bill and Gloria? Kinda, okay. And then, now what about you guys? Oh, okay, there you go. All right then, you're from Indiana too. Let's see, who else we got here? We're gonna get into the. What do you say? No, they're from Minnesota too. You're from Minnesota too. Okay, all right. Well, nice. It's like hot here to you, isn't it? Yeah. We always kind of laugh, because we have snowbirds come down in the winter and we see them like swimming in January. And it's like they say, oh, it's so warm. It's like, yeah, okay. So Dave in central Minnesota is standing by. I enjoyed the podcast with Tim Brown. Did you guys see the podcast yet with Tim Brown? It just came out yesterday, I guess. Oh, this morning, yeah. At 3 o'clock in the morning, at 3 a.m. in California. Sometime we're going to have to read that letter to you again from the lady who was very upset with us that the podcast came in at 3 a.m. in California. She was very upset because it woke her up, and we're like, turn your phone off, but anyway, Tim Brown was the subject of the podcast this week. And Tim Brown, if you remember, was the wide receiver from Notre Dame who won the Heisman. And he is also one of 10 people to win the Heisman and go on and make it into the NFL Hall of Fame. And he is the only wide receiver ever to do that. So more people have walked on the moon than have won the Heisman and gotten in the NFL Hall of Fame. And would you believe that only one quarterback has done it? Anybody want to guess? Roger Staubach. Only one. Leo Dutton, hello from stormy Illinois. And Edwina English, hello from the Alamo. Love the show. Oh, let me tell you a story about the Alamo real quick. When the hurricane, this was Hurricane Ivan, so this is like 17 years ago, and it destroyed everything around here. And so you're having to go and get your permits to rebuild and do everything. And so there was this lady. She wasn't really a lady. She was more of a woman. Because to be a lady, she'd have to be nice. She wasn't very nice. But she had this permitting office up at City Hall up in Foley. And you know how some people just like don't get the joke? They're just like, they're not going to play with you, and they just don't get the joke.
Yes.
Well, I'm needing this permit. And so I'm going in and I'm like, hey, how you doing? I'm just being nice and happy and friendly. And she's like, and it's kind of a small office. It's like about the size of the studio. And she's at her desk and I notice up on a shelf across from her is a paper mache Alamo. And it's awesome. It is awesome. Some kid or probably their parent made it, for some school project or something. But it was like this high, it was big, and it was up on the top shelf there. And it was awesome. And so I'm looking for anything to talk about, with this woman just to be nice. And I said, wow, that is an incredible Alamo. That is incredible. Did you guys do that? And she said, no, I took over this office from the person who had it before, and they moved, and they left it there. And I said, so what you're saying is that they did not remember the Alamo? And she said, yeah. Golly. I was like, I thought that was a great joke, lady. That's what I wanted to say. Okay. Marcy Crosser Taylor says it's been 41 years ago today that Mount St. Helens blew its top off here in Washington State. Wow. Well, hope you don't have a repeat of that anytime soon. Hey, how do you like the shirt? You like the shirt? This shirt is from Sand Dollar Lifestyles, right down here, the cornerstone of the wharf. And Jeff Hardy and the whole gang, Haley and Josh and Mike, they're all down there. And so definitely you got to stop by and say, hey, and see, I mean, it's huge. They've got everything. They've got everything in there. Okay, so today we're going to talk about, I just went through some stuff and found some interesting facts about presidents. Okay, so I just thought we would comment on some of these. And these are things that I don't know if you may have heard a couple of them, but I don't know if you've heard a lot of these. Okay, so here's Abraham Lincoln. Now you think you know everything about Abraham Lincoln, but he turned down the chance to own some elephants. Because in 1861, right when the Civil War was just getting going, the King of Siam offered to give President Lincoln several pairs of young male and female elephants, which were indigenous to his country, the King of Siam, which today is Thailand. But the elephants could be bred to multiply, the king suggested, and the herds could be used to work alongside the military during the Civil War. So the president politely declined the offer, opting instead to use steam engines, I guess, instead of elephants. But I thought that was pretty cool. So he also turned a blind eye to seances in the White House because his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, would host seances to try to reach their son. Okay, Gerald Ford was actually a model, a male model, and was on the cover of Cosmopolitan magazine. Now, he's our 38th president, but he had a side gig as a model. In 1942, shortly after joining the Navy, he landed a spot on the cover of Cosmopolitan in his uniform. Now, here's another fact about this. It was during this time that he met and went on to marry a fellow model whose name was Elizabeth Bloomer. Elizabeth, which is a longer name, I think, for Betty, because she became known to Americans as the First Lady, Betty Ford. But she was a model, he was a model, and they met over Cosmopolitan. So now this one surprised me. John Quincy Adams, who is John Adams' son, he was, I think, the 6th president, I think. But he actually approved a real-life journey to the center of the earth. So back in the 1800s, very little was known about our planet. And so in the absence of scientific evidence, some people believed in some pretty kooky theories, like they do now. Like the idea that planet Earth is actually hollow. And so John Quincy Adams was on board with this one, and the commander-in-chief even signed off on a proposed expedition by a fellow hollow earther, and was going to allow an expedition to the Earth's empty core. But when Andrew Jackson was voted into office, he put the kibosh on that journey, and it never happened. So, when Thomas Jefferson was the third president. Yeah. And, when he was president, he was the president who approved Lewis and Clark. And when Lewis and Clark went out west, they literally thought that they were going to find mastodons and stuff. They thought they were going to find dinosaurs and stuff. Nobody had any clue, but they literally thought they were going to find mastodons out there. Herbert Hoover's White House staff hid from him. All right, now think about this. Here's Herbert Hoover, and you know how you hear about these like crazy Hollywood stars that like nobody needs to look at me when I come in, nobody, or some singer like Diana Ross. I've got some stories about Diana Ross, I could tell you, but she was one of those don't look at me people. But anyway, Herbert Hoover, he was the 31st president, and he insisted that his staff never see him around the White House, and he didn't want to see them either. So this caused quite the stir, of course, as the staff felt pressured to hide from the president whenever he was walking down the hallway. According to White House journalist Kenneth Walsh, staffers would pile into closets and hide behind the bushes so the president couldn't see them. Let's see, Kathy Goodwin says, I hear Herbert Hoover hid some things too. Yeah. Lyndon Johnson. This was he was a character. He was definitely a character. But he proposed, how much of a character can you be if your wife is named Lady Bird? Right. And, that's just a step up from Gladys, isn't it? But he proposed to Lady Bird with a $2.50 ring from Sears. How about that? In 1934, he was 26, and he proposed to Lady Bird Taylor, whose real name was Claudia Alta, but everybody called her Lady Bird. He was 26, she was 22, and he proposed on their first date. Okay, now she declined, but he continued to be very pushy and sent her 90 letters in the span of 90 days. Wow. But he was obviously pretty impatient. And he traveled from Washington, D.C. to Texas and arrived at her door with an ultimatum: marry me now or never. That just doesn't seem like a good idea. Okay, I remember in the 6th grade asking, Brooke Kennington to go study with me. I did it with a note, with a note that my friend took to her friend and gave to her, and then she said yes. And oh, him too? Yeah, yeah. And so she said yes. And then, so we were going with each other in the sixth grade. And then she broke, and that was at first recess, and she broke up with me at second recess, and we never actually talked to each other. But I wasn't a bozo enough to say, hey, go study with me now or forever. But Lady Bird Johnson said yes, and he gave her a $2.50 ring, an engagement ring. It's like, what a romantic guy. Judson Perkins says, does Austin do that for all his girlfriends? Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he writes letters. I don't think he does. Here's another John Quincy Adams. Now, I knew this, and I've always just thought this was weird. But John Quincy Adams, and he was the sixth president. Okay, so there wasn't a ton of Secret Service around. These guys would just go out walking. And, but he liked to go swimming early in the morning in the Potomac River naked. Yep, there's the president. He's naked. He would wake at 4 a.m., and he would go take a morning dip in his birthday suit. And so apparently skinny dipping was just like a normal thing to do. It was kind of common back in the 1800s. I thought this was weird. George W. Bush is cousins with Hugh Hefner. How about that? I wonder if W looks good in a like, what do you call those? A house suit, It's funny, when Austin was little, Austin would wear this, like, what do you call it? Bathrobe. He'd wear a bathrobe, and he'd come out and have his hair all combed. They would go, well, Hef. So, but anyway, George W. Bush, 43rd president, and the founder of Playboy, distance cousin, actually ninth cousins twice removed. They share the same pair of great grandparents. So that's not really close enough to be anything, but it's not enough. Now that would be enough for a political scandal, I'm sure. That would be enough to impeach him or something. But how about this? Warren Harding. He lost the White House china in a poker game. I just think that is hilarious. But he loved a good game of poker, and apparently he was a high roller. He would play like every other week. And during one of these every other week games, Harding gambled away a set of china that had been in the White House since President Benjamin Harrison's tenure 6 terms prior. Okay, and he bet it all on one hand. Bad hand. Do you know how the dead man's hand came about? This is not president, but this is like just a little sequel, a little side trip. It was Wild Bill Hickok. And Hickok would never sit with his back to the door. He would always sit with his back to the wall, facing the door. And one afternoon he came in and a game was already going, and they were people that he liked and respected, and he didn't want to ask anybody to move, so he sat down with his back to the door, and the guy shot him in the back. And when everything calmed down, naturally somebody had to see what cards he was holding, and they turned him up, and it was aces and eights. And ever since, that has been called the dead man's hand. So that's how that happened. Thomas Jefferson also kept pet grizzly bears. During his tenure as our third president, Thomas Jefferson became the happy recipient of a gift of a pair of grizzly bear cubs, and he kept them in a cage on the front lawn of the White House for a few months before deciding they were too dangerous to keep. And now, here's the thing. The information that I've got says that he gave them to a museum.
A live museum?
I don't know. It didn't say a zoo. It said he had these grizzly bear cubs, and he figured they were too dangerous, and he gave them to a museum. So to me, that doesn't sound good for the cubs. I mean, that sounds like they spent the rest of their days kind of doing that. Okay. Ulysses S. Grant was arrested for speeding on a horse. He was a horse guy, and he was our 18th president, and was very confident on a horse. Perhaps he was too confident. He was driving his horse and buggy at a crazy pace while he was president, and Grant was pulled over twice within the span of 24 hours. And the second time, the D.C. police officer decided to arrest the president, who was ultimately given a fine. Do you remember the episode of Andrew Griffith's show, Barney and the Governor? Y'all remember that? Where the governor came to town, and Barney, they parked the limo in front of a fire hydrant, and Barney didn't like it, and Barney ticketed the governor, and the chauffeur said, "Yeah, this is the governor's car," and Barney said, "I don't care whose car, it's my mother," and so but later. The governor called and said that he was coming back, and Barney just was very upset and drank some of Otis Campbell's water that he had hidden in the crock, his water, and Barney got smashed. And so Andy is telling him the governor is coming because he's happy, because he did he did this. He just had the guts, and Barney's just drunk off his butt, and Barney's going, "The governor's coming here? Bless his heart." Okay, the first White House bowling alley was a birthday present for Harry Truman. In 1947, 33rd President Harry Truman became responsible for having a bowling alley installed in the West Wing in celebration of his 63rd birthday. And he became the first person ever to throw a bowling ball down the White House lane. And he knocked down 7 pins, and I've seen one of them that is on display in the Smithsonian. So, now, get this. George Herbert Walker Bush. This is Bush 1. He almost chose Clint Eastwood as his running mate in 88 because he just wasn't happy with anybody that was available, and he wasn't feeling lucky. And you remember, do you feel lucky, punk? Do you feel lucky? So he wasn't feeling lucky. So he considered bringing, Dirty Harry on as a vice president candidate to breathe life into this campaign. And Clint Eastwood had been mayor of Carmel, California, but Bush famously chose Dan Quayle as his running mate instead, who couldn't spell potato, who's from Indiana. Do you know that I did a thing for President George Herbert Walker Bush at Ford's Theater after the first Gulf War, and so everybody was there. I mean, everybody was happy, and so all of the senators and their spouses and the Supreme Court and their spouses, everybody was there, and it was for the president's charity. Every year they call it the president's charity, which is Ford's Theater, and so every year whoever the president is chooses the entertainment, and they go see it. And so this year, because everybody was in such a good mood, they aired it live on ABC, and it was so George Herbert Walker Bush chose. Let me tell you who was there. It was Randy Travis, the Oak Ridge Boys, Alabama, Alan Jackson, Clint Black, K.T. Oslin, Tanya Tucker, and me. And I was the only one who wasn't a singer. I was a comedian. And I remember when they introduced me, John Ritter and Terry Garr hosted the thing. And when they introduced me, I remember walking out, and there's President and Mrs. Bush and Dan and Marilyn Quayle. And I remember thinking that Dan Quayle looked horrified. I mean, he just looked terrified because, there's a comedian coming out, I guess, because everybody was, all the late night comics, everybody was making fun of him. And here he is on live TV, and it was like 4 or 5 minutes before he calmed down. But the first thing I said when I got out there, I said, wow, I'm just telling you, I'm just a little nervous because, to think that I'm here and right there is conceivably the most powerful person in the world at this time, and the fact that you let your husband come too, Mrs. Bush, is amazing. And so they laughed. All right, here's another presidential fact. We're winding them down now. James Garfield, who was killed by his doctor, really. He was shot. He was assassinated. But he lingered for like 6 weeks. And if you read the biography of Garfield, it was the doctor's fault. I'm telling you, if it hadn't been for that doctor, he'd be alive today, I guess. But James Garfield could write in Greek with one hand and at the same time write in Latin with the other. He was ambidextrous, but he could write in 2 languages simultaneously. He taught both languages while he was in college at Williams College in Massachusetts, where he was later named president there before being elected as the 20th president of the United States and being killed by his doctor. Okay, so then there are 2 rival presidents they were kind of rivals. They were friends, but they were rivals. And that's John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. And they died on the exact same day. I mean, just within like an hour of each other. It was crazy. And on his deathbed, Adams said, Thomas Jefferson still survives. But he was wrong. Jefferson had just died. So Jefferson already died. Okay, here is the last one. I saved the best for last. This is just kind of tragic and kind of weird, but William McKinley would wear a red carnation. And he always said that was his lucky carnation. That was his lucky flower. And so he was known for wearing this red carnation for good luck. And, it probably was a good luck charm because he was greeting a little girl at an event in 1901, and he decided to give his lucky flower to her. And then he was assassinated. I mean, he gave the flower away and then somebody shot him. So, how's that? Keep your lucky flower, folks. Just keep your lucky flower. Let me just tell you. All right. Well, that's just about it for today. Anybody else want to talk about anything, or have we talked enough? I think we might have talked enough. My throat is kind of my voice is kind of. Edwina English says LBJ didn't have the ring when they were to be married. He sent a friend to get a ring, and the only place open in San Antonio was Sears. And his friend bought 10 rings because he didn't really know what size Lady Bird wore. Okay, so 10 rings at $200. The guy still only dropped $25, I mean, for 10 rings. So, Deanna Kilpatrick, thank you very much. Sherry Flowers, I'm glad you guys were interested today. We have a good time doing this. And so you can still, even if you're watching later, you can still share it. There's Monica Early. How are you doing, Monica? Monica's protocol officer for Special Ops. And Jan Ritter says, isn't your birthday this month? Yes. Hannah Gadledge, had fun today. Joy Walker, no trade. Oh, you want to know when my birthday was? My birthday is May 22nd. 22. And that is my favorite number, not really because it's my birthday number. It's my favorite number because that was Johnny Musso's number, who is my favorite Alabama player of all time. And Najee Harris and Mark Ingram and these running backs were really only good because they wore Johnny Musso's number 22. Okay. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you being here with us. It is Tuesday, and we will see you Thursday.